O Lord, open our lips.
And our mouth shall show forth your praise.
O God, make speed to save us.
O Lord, make haste to help us.
Caroline Baston has been ordained in the Church of England for 28 years, first as a deacon and then as a priest. In those years, she experienced being the first woman rector in a church and the first female archdeacon of the Isle of Wight. Before her career as a priest, Caroline worked as a teacher, but then she decided to take a different path.
I had decided that Christianity was a viable option intellectually and socially as a young adult, having met people who were actively engaged in quite radical things, and in particular the church's involvement in South Africa against apartheid. So I decided to sort of give Christianity a go, and after a while I decided I might go to church, and the rest, as they say, is history. Gradually I became more involved in my local church. I thought about becoming a nun and working with Mother Teresa, but the few days after that my vicar gave me a leaflet on vocation and said, "Have you thought about church ministry?" And I said, "Oh yes, but not, I didn't think women should be ordained." I had no experience of women in ministry. I think I still believe some of the arguments that Jesus' disciples were men, so therefore only men could be priests. And gradually I had to come to the realisation that I was being called to do the very thing I wasn't sure women should be doing. And as soon as I realised that and thought about it, am I restricting God? If God can't work through a woman, what sort of God do I believe in? So I think that changed it. And also seeing some really excellent women who'd worked many, many years in a parish and actually couldn't be the vicar, purely because they were women. And that's what changed my mind.
Caroline visited Romsey Abbey to reflect on the history where it all began.
Well, it's amazing to be back here in Romsey Abbey, where I was ordained priest in 1994, amongst the first women in the Church of England to be ordained. And it was just extraordinary to come into this packed church after all the debates, all the years of waiting for so many people. This was actually happening. And it was just a day of joy, excitement, trepidation, fear, everything mixed up, but seeing family and friends and all those who'd supported us for so long. One of the important parts of the service, the bishop asked those who are about to be ordained, I think the words are something like, "We trust that long ago you began to ponder and weigh in your mind these things." And it struck me so powerfully because I was standing next to a woman who was 66, and she had waited since she was 18 to be ordained and remained faithful even though she didn't know that the church would one day ordain her priest. So that was a really poignant moment. So here we are in St Andrew's, Chilcombe. The church was built in 1060, and we have a list of the rectors which actually go back to 1285. There were rectors before there, but the names are lost. And it's not until 1995 that the first woman appears, and that's my name. And it's slightly strange to look at it and realise you're part of history. And when I look at it now, I realise that I was aware of the weight of history of being the first woman, but I don't think it ever stopped me doing the job I was called to do here. If you worry too much about the past, you never get on with what's in front of you.
But being ordained woman in the church did have its pressures.
Funny, I think I was aware of the responsibility that actually if I made a mess of it, it would be assumed it was because I was a woman, not because I couldn't do the job. So I think every time I've gone into a new role where I've been the first woman, I've had to just note that there's a responsibility alongside that of doing the job as well as I can. Otherwise it will be assumed that a woman can't do it. But that's, I think, always part of the pressure of being in the vanguard of any movement. If you're the first in anything, that pressure will be on you.
There have been mixed feelings about women in church ministry.
Well, the actual church I was involved with were absolutely 110% behind it. They couldn't understand when the vicar went away, they had to have a man come in because I wasn't allowed to take parts of the service. So for them, there wasn't an issue, they just couldn't understand it. But there was still at the time a lot of prejudice against women priests. So there were people who wouldn't shake my hands, people who wouldn't speak to me if they saw me in a different circumstance, if they knew I was ordained as a deacon. And I went and was involved in some of the debates, speaking in favour, and some of the comments were very nasty and very vitriolic.
What kind of comments was it?
Oh, you're responsible for all the problems in the church, was one of the nicer ones. Women are like Eve, they're the ones who are temptresses, and if women get involved in the church, you'll destroy the church. You know, it's been sacred for all these years and you come in and taint it. I mean, the language was really awful. But because they were some of them were so bitter and so difficult, I think it made more people think, actually, what is this about? You know, and for other people. So when I first went to Winchester as the vicar, we had people join the church because the church had ordained women. We had one woman who'd never been to church in her life and said, if the church is ordaining women and think it's important, then I shall start coming. And she came and has stayed in the church for 30 years. And very active, and her girls grew up knowing that it was a possible option for a woman to be a priest.
For 5 years, she worked as the archdeacon of Isle of Wight, but in 2011 she decided to step down in that role.
A couple of times people have said to me, why did you throw away your career? And I would say it wasn't about throwing away a career, it was about following what I believe God wanted me to do. The bishop I'd been working with as Archdeacon of the Isle of Wight died, and it felt that my time had come to an end there. So on reflecting and talking to other people, it became clear that it was right to step down and do something else. So I went with another woman priest and a layman to go and turn around a parish. And then it felt that that job had ended, and again it was right to step down. And some people understand that, and some people think I'm mad. For me, I think my ministry has always been, where can I make a difference?